Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today and a very warm good afternoon. And I'm super elated to welcome you all to this illustrious session on driving change and innovation, building a workforce for the future. With the advent of massive ongoing disruption, leaders are now augmenting the processes and strategy to hone the everyday experiences of their workforce. Economic Times HR World, in association with IBM, has come together to raise the curtain for the next wave of transformation. Today, we'll find answers on what organizations must do to influence the everyday experiences of their people and still continue to embrace the innovations, uncertainties, and advanced inclusion of the future. Please join me in welcoming the eclectic group of leaders for the session. Welcoming Colin Mendes, Head of Human Resources, Voltas Beko, Pooja Bilutra, Group CHRO, Trident Group, Praveen Menon, CPO, India First Life Insurance, Rajiv Bharadwaj, CHRO, Asia Service Centers, Sun Life, Rajiv Nathani, Chief People Officer, Infogain, Sudhir Mattu, Partner, IBM Consulting, and Vinay Razdan, Chief Human Resources Officer, HDFC Bank. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Sure, the audience is really excited about what's coming next. So, before I delve into the much awaited discussion with the starry panel, let me remind you all that we have budgeted time for the question and answers at the end of the session. Though you can continue to share them during the session, we'll try and get answers during the course of the discussion or by the end of it. So, yes, without any further ado, I'm really excited to kickstart this discussion. And like I always do, my first question is for my panel, taking everyone's perception as we step into this journey. So, let me start with Vinay first, and then I'm going to come to each one of you. So, Vinay, uh, I'm really looking forward to hearing from you on how are leaders rooting for companies' innovation quotient and helping it stay agile from a business lens.
Thank you, Soumya, for inviting me here in this seasoned group of panel which is present here. Hope to learn a lot from them. Just a disclaimer, my comments are my own, personal, do not represent the views of the organization that I work in. And coming to the question, innovation, I think very, very much used and much loud word, but most organizations, find it not very easy to operationalize this, right? And having an innovation question is a good way to put a scorecard around it and to measure it. And one of my previous companies, we had done it very successfully. But one example which I would like to quote, which is of the bank and it is in the public knowledge, which is about the 10-second personal loan. Two things I would like to point out here. One is that when you talk about innovation, it's not only deployment of technology. Something is manual, you put technology in it, make it digital. Is that innovation? Is a good question to ask. I think the question is, are you able to serve a known or an unknown need of the customer in a manner which delights the customer? The focal point has to be the customer. So in a sense, cutting down or redesigning or designing a new process completely, backing it up with technology, backing it up with algorithms, basis which you can take credit-related decisions about people who apply for loans instead of them filling up forms and then waiting for days for a reward. In practically 10 seconds, you get to know whether you're going to get the loan or not. And hopefully, if you've got good credit history, you do get it. So that's a, significant customer delight. So to me, I think that's a breakthrough innovation. At the same time, let's not forget that these breakthrough innovations don't happen every day, right? There are, life is an organization, life is made of lots of small victories, which are themselves very important. And I just want to share one small example, in which case I had to unlearn and learn something new. If I had taken a call that it would have never seen the light of the day, but it was a learning for me also. This was when we are trying to re-engineer processes and automate our talent acquisition processes. And my TA head came and told me that, he's tied up with one agency which can send hundreds of SMSs to known, it was a call, voice call, to a recorded message, which can go to hundreds of interested candidates and to check, solicit interest, whether you're interested or not interested. And I was coming from 13 years of telecom, where people were, so hassled about receiving, unsolicited calls and messages and texts. And I thought, is this going to work? People are fed up. I don't even pick up a call which is unknown number and all that. And then I said, fine, yeah, I mean, if you seem to be convinced, you go ahead. And I was surprised. It were more than 80% people received the calls, more than, close to 70% people responded, and bulk of them said yes. And it was, a few seconds, 30, 40 seconds of a recorded voice, and then said, if you're interested, press this or that. And that became a very successful channel for us to cut down on so much of human effort, with otherwise you have to call up each person to solicit that same interest. So innovations across the hue, small innovations also, which save a lot of, add to the productivity, and big innovations which really make a difference to the customer as well. I'll stop here.
Thank you, Vinay. I think that was a great start, and very, very honestly said that, being keeping your customers at the heart of everything that you do, and that's exactly what drives a lot of innovation. So thank you for that. I'm coming next to you, Pooja.
Thanks, Soumya. Vinayji, lovely to hear you. So I think I just got inspired by the example you gave of things that how can I use the same thing to get things going. But I think, necessity is the mother of invention, like they said. I think that example couldn't be any truer in this day and age that we are at. In our world, and we're in a manufacturing organization, and there's a lot of things that have sort of been a huge challenge, to say the least, in the past couple of years. And I'm referring to the past couple of years because I think a lot of innovations have come because of the necessity of doing that. And the one big learning, at least for me, is that innovation is not about technology, it's not about processes, it's about a mindset. It's about whatever little things or big things one can do to make somebody's life easier, some things faster, some things a little better than what they had been done before. And anything, and the reason I say is that, all of these things, innovation comes from the most quarters that you can't even imagine. So when you look at blue-collared workers, a lot of times you relegate the idea of innovation and thinking and R&D to a certain elite set of people and all of that. It doesn't really happen that way. The kind of innovations you see from people for whom the shoe pinches the most, and the demands of the situation, I think that has brought a lot of the first time things and things that have been done differently in the past couple of years. So on that note, I think it's more of a mindset, and any organization that can inculcate such a culture, the number of innovations that can happen are absolutely mind-boggling.
Absolutely. And it comes from the unknown quarters. Thank you for that, Pooja. Colin, I'm coming to you now.
Absolutely. And I cannot so much echo what Pooja just mentioned. And I also come from a manufacturing setup. But let me try and just illustrate it in a form of an example. And, Soumya, a little more than a year back, in the midst of the pandemic, we introduced actually a program called Impact, which stands for Making Every Day Better. And we built this program on 4 pillars. We built a program on excellence, on achievement, on efforts, and on responsibility. Yeah. We made a small start at in our factory in Sanand, where the focus was really on excellence, really comprising of quality, innovation, and creativity. And I think, as Pooja mentioned, and I can't echo it so that much and often, but this program really gave each and every employee an opportunity to focus on continuous improvement. And I think whether it's big, whether it's small, whether it's micro or macro, it really doesn't matter, as long as you can focus on small improvements that can take place. And particularly in a manufacturing setup where these small improvements really contribute to a very large extent in terms of building better products for the customer, in terms of saving costs and optimizing returns, and so on and so forth, in terms of increasing productivity, and so on and so forth. And I think, if you ask me, this has really helped focus the shift in the mindset from a number of people, from really getting into problem solving to which is more problem solving based to more solution based. I think that has been one of the significant takeaways in this entire thing. And we've totally believed, and that continuous improvement is really the foundation for innovation, because every small improvement that you make, can contribute to a bigger chain, so to say. And the proof of the pudding today is in the eating. And today, I would say a number of ideas have really emerged from even the shop floor level. Yeah. And let me tell you that, that today the team is continuously working on improving products, improving processes, and it's not necessarily all about technology. It's about small takes, small breaks, and small makes.
Thank you for that, Colin. I love the diversity that's coming forward. Just until three of them, and there are still four more to go. So I'm coming to now Rajiv with the double E.
Thank you, Soumya. I think it's very inspiring to hear, the views on innovation and how the industry is evolving. I don't think we can segregate it into sectors, because it's a horizontal which is cutting across, all the areas we operate in. I would say that innovation today is a business imperative and a cultural imperative. And a lot of organizations, like Pooja said, that necessity is the mother of invention. They are pushed to do it. It's not by choice. But once you are on that journey, you begin to enjoy it. A lot of us have worked in ecosystems where continuous improvement, Kaizen, incremental gains, were a way of life. I see innovation as something which is taking it to the next level. Instead of being satisfied with incremental gains, you're actually looking for big wins, and aiming much higher than what one was doing earlier. Also, the whole concept of stitching it into business processes. So it is no longer something you do one day a week or 1 month. You kind of stitch it into what you're doing as a part of your business process and make it an objective and track it. From that perspective, there's a lot of education which is happening. A lot of organizational projects are taken up. We set up an innovation team about 2 years back, with a lot of belief, and invested in it, and have nurtured and cultivated it, and built it up. And we are now seeing the deployment in various facets of the organization, whether and not only external, in terms of the business partners we serve, but even internal, into our own processes and how we are kind of looking at them from a new lens. I do believe that there is a need to constantly reiterate the conviction, and bring in a certain amount of uh, you know uh, celebrate it, to make it, because a lot of times the moment you say innovation, people feel it is something which is beyond them and someone else will do it. So making it more down to earth, easy to relate to, and making it everyone's responsibility is where a lot of organizations are focusing on today. And I
Yeah,
believe we do not have the luxury of letting this opportunity go by. It is an opportunity, and a massive one.
yeah.
And given the change we are facing, it is going to be, it is something which could be a force multiplier or a leverage we could be looking at.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Rajiv. I really love that point where you're saying that it is not just a business imperative, but a cultural one. So that's a very, very solid statement coming out. Thank you so much. Rajiv, I'm coming to you now with an I.
Thank you. I'd like to build it on what Rajiv Bhardwaj did mention in terms of business imperatives, culture imperatives, as well as what Pooja said from a necessity point of view. Coming from the technology industry, for us, all of these perspectives are very, very essential. And we have seen it across the industries, what really happened in the last 2 years, where the technology adoption increased and brought in different dimensions of technology challenges and complexities. Now, let me make it more contextual to Infogain so that I'm able to share the real life context to it. I personally believe that there has to be a punchline or a tagline which should enable the culture context of innovation in the organization. Because what you need is the common behaviors of people which drive the innovation in the organization context. So in Infogain, what we call ourselves, our tagline is engineering business outcomes. Now, we are a software technology company, right? So what we engineer. We engineer software solutions. Who do we do it for? We do it for our customers. And why do we do it? What is the end objective for that? The end objective is to impact the business outcomes positively. So that entire tagline defines the behaviors for us from an engineering delivery capabilities perspective. Now, we have been seeing our customers have been also going from legacy modernization to adopting different technology mix, whether it is adoption of cloud, analytics, design, usability, experience, etc. So in such a context, when our customer business and their impacts are also evolving, how do we ensure that we remain relevant in the overall scheme of things as a services organization? And that's where this kind of tagline really helps us remain very focused. We say that, okay, we know that this is what we want to impact from our business outcomes of customers perspective. So we remain very focused. And at the same time, we know our boundaries. So we never say that when we are impacting the business outcomes, we impact them in the context of certain defined domain and verticals. We don't say we'll do it for financial organization. For example, if the customer is supporting banks like SDFC Bank, for example. So we don't have that capability, we'll not get into that space. So that's where I'll limit my context of response. Back to you, Soumya. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Rajiv. And I'm coming to Sudhir now. Sudhir, what is your take?
Hey, thank you. I think let me add further color to what my panelists already have done. I think it comes to as a culture. Does everybody feel they can innovate and they can thrive versus it's a certain number of people, somebody else's responsibility, right? I think one of the things that we have worked for ourselves and for our customers is how do you codify it? How do you make it a nature where your voice is heard, right? So one of the ways which we believe last 6-7 years we have successfully done is patents, right? It could be about a design, it could be engineering solution, it could be any of the contexts we have across industries, right? How do you help each employee think they actually could do a patent? And the whole process of supporting them through, at least for our context, has been quite helpful because you are not dependent on your manager, you are not dependent on leadership teams to hear you. You can go through your process, get your patent certified. And it's what we call innovation at scale at an enterprise level globally, if you had to do it, because then everybody feels they're empowered to go build on something. And it's something their own credentials they can talk about, and it stays with the employee for the rest of their lives as well. So that whole approach of how do you codify it and really make it a part of your DNA is quite important. And that's what we have leveraged and what we have felt actually helps us land in a way, which Vinay was referring to. It's a scorecard, but how do you kind of further take it, which people are inspired to do something on their own? So that has been our journey and our success around codifying the innovation part.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. Thank you, Sudhir. Praveen, I'm coming to you for the closing one on this one.
Okay. Furthermore, what to add is what I was thinking. I think the panelists covered it all. But still, if you were to ask me that what could be the innovation mantra for an organization, we have done a few things. Of course, as they say that what brought you here may not take you there, right? And it is relevant not only for business but also for employees, right? One needs to stay relevant. Now, 2 years back or 2.5 years back, nobody expected COVID to hit so massively across the globe, right? And when that happened, whether invoking BCP, whether thinking of reaching the last mile in terms of customer, everything required that innovation. And possibly it would not have been possible that suddenly the mindset got changed in an organization and people started thinking very differently. So there was possibly a need for the organization to have planned this in some form or the other, not to the extent of what a COVID actually did to us, but at least making sure that people are agile, when it comes to dynamic thinking, right? So at India First Life, we've been doing that for some time. So a couple of things in terms of the culture framework, which the other panelists actually talked about. We created an environment of empowerment, and it's kind of our employee value proposition when we go out and tell our employees that you are completely empowered to innovate, right? The second was fear of failure. So we gave that comfort to people, stating that even if you fail, don't worry, fail fast, that's okay, but we'll back you. And the third was the fact that, of course, there is people talked about it, that, complete change in innovation and even minor changes when it comes to processes, etc. And what we believe is that at times the last person or last mile who is actually doing the job will be in a position to innovate his or her areas of work or areas of things. So we created something called an innovation lab. So much so that in the office, we created a space and we said that, okay, I mean, it's a very differently curated logistics that if somebody wants to kind of, let's assume, laze around, and if the thinking comes out very differently, if you're able to laze around and think through, we will give you that environment, right? So we said that nothing should stop. No impediment should stop from people thinking very differently, right? So we created some of those things, and the proof of the pudding is the fact that when COVID struck us, we've been able to kind of do everything by and large like pre-COVID times, within a matter of few weeks. Okay, and COVID also has accentuated the need for people to be agile completely.
Absolutely.
So it has reinforced the belief in the organization that innovation is no longer something that you will think through. It should be a part of your culture to begin with, right now, right away. So those would be some of my takeaways, in terms of the innovation as a mantra, as a sort of culture framework.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Praveen. And definitely it's right now, right away. I totally love it how every one of you has brought together a very different narrative on how to stay agile. What does innovation really means, and how beautifully you've kind of deconstructed this entire quotient. So thank you so much. And now, as we move ahead into this discussion, I want to understand more on a couple of elements, and I'm going to go one by one on it. So, firstly, Praveen, I'm going to start with Rajiv actually. So, Rajiv, with an I, how are you fostering engagement and empowering your workforce in a remote setting? And when I ask this question, I want to understand how does this entire thing happen by keeping them aligned with a bigger vision of the brand?
Yeah. So I think it's really a big challenge for us. If I would say that we have mastered it, I would actually be not saying it correctly. We have not gone back to workplace for 2 years. Now, close to 50% of our population have joined us in last 2 years, because significant amount of growth has happened for technology companies like us, and we have made some acquisitions also on the fly. So we have a challenge, but at the same time, again going back to the fact that when there's a challenging situation, you always try to overcome and you try addressing it by different ways. So what we have been doing to ensure, one, the engagement, despite of being a remote context for us, is maintained, and as well as we empower our employees in the overall ecosystem perspective. So there are three broader things which is driving all of it. Number one is we actually have a 4 C's of InfoGain, as we call it. So one C is called connect, and connect is very important and essential element in this entire context. And our Connect framework actually focuses on building relationship both at personal and professional level with our employees. So what we have done is we have made all the interactions very humanly with our people. So even when a manager is actually talking to a colleague or a team member, the manager ensures that we respect the personal space of the individual. We kind of taken a rule that certain hours, especially Friday evening or late evening calls, are we need, because this entire thing from a personal professional life thing became very blurred from a time schedule perspective. So, and at the same time, when there's a recognition happening, can you actually leverage the presence of extended extended family members and talk to them directly about the good thing the team member has done? So the connect is actually happening at relationship level with the people. The second C's of InfoGain is about communicate, and this entire framework makes the leadership accountable for the regular communication with the employees in the organization, whether it is through the monthly between the manager and the team members. We have mandated that as a framework where the managers are actually talking to individuals on topics not related to the work. so that there's a better communication happening between the two of them. The relationship building is happening. There's a global town hall which we have come up across global locations. There are leadership forums which have come up. Now, how do we cascade and disseminate the communication downward to ensure that people feel empowered about the information? I'll give you a very recent example. We closed, so we follow the fiscal year as April to March in the company. We had our annual operating plan meeting, which happened with our board members. We are a privately held company backed by a private equity firm called Apex Partners. So we presented our entire AOP plan to them, and once it was finalized, we went to the next leadership layer in the organization, and then respective leaders have taken it downward to their respective teams. And that's where we are ensuring that everybody understands what is the annual operating plan for the organization this year and what are the expectations we have from each one of them as we move forward in the journey. The third C for us is the collaborative aspect, which is all about enabling a culture of camaraderie and teamwork in the organization. In the technology companies, the agile methodology is very popular. We work in Scrum teams. There was a perspective before we got into the pandemic space that you cannot work if you're not together, right? The agile methodology is basis that, but we kind of learned how to make it work effectively. And that's where technology and applications have really made a big difference in terms of enabling that. And the fourth C is the celebrate. It's all about reminding us to take pause, whether it's a nanosecond pause or whatever time frame pause in our fast-moving journey, to reflect upon the success and achievements we have achieved all this while, and then celebrate them. Then, in addition to this, there is an element of, and I'll actually try to make it fast, so respecting other panelists here. There's an emotional connect element to it. We make sure that we remain humane. Most recently, we have an office in Poland as well. There are immigrants employees from Ukraine who are working with us in Poland. So we are making sure that these people are supported well, so that they can bring their families to the country. And also through CSR charter, we are supporting people back in Ukraine. So there is an element of human angle to it. We call our business offering as human-centered digital platform for engineering companies. So that human-centered approach is actually deep into our culture from a people perspective, and that helps in terms of creating better engagement with people. And then the last important thing in the overall context is experience-led. We live in a world which is an experiential economy driven. We don't deliver experience to our people, starting from our people practices to the overall cultural context, we will have a big problem, right? And that's the essential thing for us, starting from a candidate connect, overall candidate experience to the last stage of separation process. All these touch points have been identified and linked with the experience-led context in the organization. So these are some of the things that, I cannot actually get into a lot of detailing because of the time issue, but these are helping us. As I said at the beginning, we have not mastered it. We have our own set of challenges. The industry is such, which is throwing every day new challenges to us. But we'll keep learning as we move forward. Thank you. Back to you, Samia.
Absolutely, Rajiv. Thank you so much. And full points on the honesty with which you shared this. And I love that candor. You say that, we've not mastered it, but we're definitely rooting for it. And this is going to come out someday. Thank you so much. Praveen, I'm coming to you. What will your checklist be in this pandemic? How have you really kept up with that quotient?
Yeah. So basically, when the pandemic struck us, a sense of belonging was actually, it went out of the window initially to begin with, right? So the question was that how do you connect base with the employees? There were issues all around. Nobody had seen anything like this. There was no physical connect possible. And first it started with a sense of belonging, which we had to create. Thereafter, when you saw a lot of things which was which was never there before, a sense of purpose also, I think, got questioned. Many a times employees started thinking, saying that what is the need for me to really put in that kind of an effort if I am not sure that how my life is going to be or the life of a dear and near one is going to be, right? It started getting questioned, and it is completely oxymoron in that sense of the organization telling employees that, you kind of do well. There is a reward end of the day. You build your careers. And when in a contrast, you get some kind of a response stating that what is the need for me to sweat and toil because possibly my life is at stake, right? So we had to deal with both of these emotions going hand in hand, be it lack of sense of belonging, thought process, and then sense of purpose. And that's where the entire discussion actually started for us. Okay. So what we actually did is that we wanted to replicate everything pre-COVID, even during COVID times. But the question was that how do we do it? There was only one way of doing it, which was a virtual medium. So we looked at all the employee touch points in terms of the employee life cycle journey. And we said that by and large, all of those things, we will make it happen, even if it means it's through a virtual platform. So right from virtual onboarding to digital classroom training sessions to rewards and recognition doing through a virtual medium, and the gifts and goodies and accolades being sent to their respective homes, communication from the top management to the families of the employees, and we are like a typical into a life insurance, we are a life insurance company, right? And till now, if the customer is there in front of us, our sales guys would have been able to kind of close the transaction with the customer, right? Now the customer was no longer available physically to close the transaction. So there was a need for us to make sure that we touch base with the customer. So the entire training team, which is a part of HR, actually helped, and we created a program called eSampark, wherein through a webinar like what we are doing now, we invited customers and we trained the sales guys that even through a virtual medium, you can influence your customers as well as get into something like a sale. So suddenly, even the sales guy started thinking, stating that, okay, should I be just a sales guy, or should I also have some kind of a skill set in training? Okay. Yeah. And so these input parameters, these all the enablers for somebody to do well, even when things are not really looking up outside, helped a cascade of a feeling of a sense of belonging. And of course, there is always light at the end of the tunnel. And through all these efforts, I mean, be it the fact that we gave increments, be it the fact that we announced promotions, we gave bonuses, we said that this is just a time, which is going to be short driven. Eventually people would see light at the end of the tunnel. We are all in this together. And that's how this entire piece of communication and culture cascade we did. And, for me, the proof of the pudding is today we are one of the fastest growing life insurance companies. So all the inputs, efforts, and the initiatives that we took during COVID times actually is helping us to reap the results today. So Absolutely. These are some of the initiatives that we actually took from the organization side.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Praveen. Rajiv, I'm coming to you now.
Thanks, Soumya. It's very inspiring again to hear the panelists, and I believe most of us have been on a very similar journey. So the interest of brevity, I'll actually pick up 2 or 3 items which I feel I'd like to highlight. One is that Sun Life Financial is an insurance and wealth management firm in Canada. In India, we have the Global Capability Center, apart from the Birla Sun Life joint venture. So I speak on behalf of the Global Capability Center. Being an insurance firm, the sense of purpose towards health, wellness, and well-being is very pronounced. And, the pandemic and the crisis gave us an opportunity to display the same, and also display care and values in the way we, went through it and engaged with our employees. One of the things which, for me personally, the learning has been that engagement and empowerment have to be by design, because otherwise a series of accidental adventures will still take you there, though not necessarily where you want to be. So, the sheer, I would say, drastic transformation of change gave different organizations an opportunity to look within and see what is it can do in terms of providing digital experience to the employee life cycle. I can say this for sure, that it was not something by choice, but it was something by force, because there was no other way you could connect with a remote audience. So,
the effort which went into translating the employee life cycle processes into a digital experience and transformation is something which really stands out, and our organization is no different. We kind of focused on that and gave that experience through a series of digital initiatives which were undertaken. I think the second element is more pronounced. It is the virtual engagement with the employees, and you're talking about a very young workforce. And how do you make virtual social the new phenomena, that you are no longer getting an opportunity to meet in person and engage and celebrate the way you were, but how do you kind of bring about and translate an in-person immersiveness to a virtual connect is a challenge which we've been working on, to make it as seamless as possible for the employees. The regulation items of recognition, employee listening are all taken to an enhanced level because of social withdrawal which comes in a remote situation. You see, how to actually reach out and not make it transactional, and yet at the same time respect the privacy of the individual. So I think there's been a little bit of a delicate navigation at that point in time around that. And I think I would just sum it up by saying that the digital transformation which has happened to organizational processes internally is something which has driven both engagement as well as empowerment of the workforce.
And that's a very balanced approach, Rajiv. Thank you so much. And I'm sure the audience has taken it down that the virtual social is the new phenomena. That's very, very important here. That brings me to the next side of the question. And this is pretty interesting because I would love to know the secret sauce to extracting the most from the current talent management practices and how our leaders are seeing it evolving in the year 2023. So I'm going to start with Vinay first.
Yeah, Soumya, so the first thing is there's no secret sauce. I hope there was. It would have made life very easy for all of us. There's no secret sauce. And implementing, so, bank is 100,000 people with about 40,000 people or sales officers, which are also on the bank rolls, and plus about 70,000 of associate manpower. That's the size of the bank, right? So in this, when you're trying to, and bank always had a history of outstanding performance, iconic organization historically under the leadership of Mr. Puri till October 20, and then Mr. Jagdishan now. The fact is there's a lot of internal talent which was always available and which always was ready to take the higher roles as we, grew from a small startup to where the bank is played. But the contours are very, very different now. When the size is this, the simple aspect is visibility of people on a day-to-day basis, knowing who's doing well. Scorecards and many other things help you, but you need to put in formal frameworks which guide you. And it can't be one set of framework, you have to have multiple frameworks. So, in fact, related to the earlier question, which some of my panelists here answered, and shared their experiences and insights. In fact, the shock of the pandemic and then waiting for it to get over so we could resume normalcy, which never happened, and it kept on getting extended. And how organizational life evolved, So some very interesting experiences to share. I found that, so we had a situation, unlike possibly most of the people here representing the organizations, that we had 40,000 plus employees who by regulation had to work in branches. You could not shut down the branches, because RBI regulations were very clear that banking is an essential service and you have to operate them. So obviously, you had a COVID case, you shut down a branch for a week, 10 days, that's a different issue. But then again, you had to open it. So we had half the organization which was working right through the pandemic, right? And then you have to do whatever it takes to get your physical places sanitized and all those things, and everyone knows here how difficult that was in the times that we were all living in, because everyone was running after sanitizers and masks and gloves and God knows what all. The other part is that because it's a bank, it's a very cyber security is of prime importance. So imagine my shock when I came from telecom sector into banking, and I found that you could not even access internet inside the bank because it is just not allowed. So now we had a situation that people could not come to work, and all your applications are designed in a manner that it only enables physical working, right? But you have to keep the operations going at the same point in time, because transactions are happening, no company is stopping, small company, big company, individual banking customers, and so on and so forth. So I honestly don't know how our IT team managed what they did, and our cyber security people managed what they did. It must be huge collaboration with all their partner organizations and all the, even sourcing our laptops. The whole of country was running after laptop companies and trying to get, because working from home had to be enabled and so on and so forth. The other aspect which I thought was pretty much liberating, and which hopefully is a good change, which has arisen out of it, that your ability to reach people through a technology platform. In the earlier days, like a customer would expect a visit, as one of my other panelists said, you do a sale, you meet the customer and you try and close it. But in today's world, it's okay for people to do a virtual discussion on very important matters concerning finance or related products or so on and so forth. Similarly, two years back, 3 years back, the expected thing would be and we have about 5,700 branches spread all across the country, right? So I could not talk and do a VC with someone. They will feel that I'm shortchanging them. I'm not physically coming and talking to them. That would be the expectation.
Not giving it importance.
That would have been the general expectation.
True.
And through the technology platforms today now, which are so commonly available, and we are hosting a similar platform here also, I have done meetings with thousands of people. In one case, 7,000-8,000 people, in other case, 5,000 people, which from a sense of wanting to reach your message into the organization is a very, very satisfying feeling, because sending mail and sending PPTs and sending pre-recorded messages, they all have their limited utility. But your ability to do a 3-hour discussion in which 1 hour is you're sharing whatever you want to share, and 2 hours is just open house and anyone gets to ask anything. I mean, what it does to your culture, which you say you want to be open and transparent, I mean, those things actually go a long way in convincing people that organization is actually open and transparent. So I think huge amount of opportunities that came our way. Now, specifically to the question on talent management, when you're dealing with a mask like this, you have to do it at all levels. So I'll just quickly, without taking too much time, say for about 10,000 plus first line supervisors who manage teams, like a branch manager is managing a team of people, right? Similarly, across the whole organization, we got about 10,000 plus people. We tied up with a partner organization, and we did a virtual development centers for more than 10,000 people during this COVID time, which I don't think we would have even dreamt of doing in the other times. The expectation would have been to do a physical development center. We ran a development center, covered more than 10,000 people, and the subsequent work around IDPs and the training content needs to get linked and so on and so forth. So that is one set. That is bread and butter. You have to take care of the bulk of the organization, which is the set of people who are leading people on a day-to-day basis, who are interacting with your customers, who are managing their needs and satisfying them, and so on and so forth. Then you have specific initiatives around diversity. For example, we ran a career accelerator program, so more than about 121 carefully selected women employees, who are high performers. And the whole idea is how can we fast track that, from a talent management standpoint. Recently, something we have done, and in the organization on this size, you will understand the the question always is in the mind that who are the next set of leaders? Where are they going to come from? And you just don't have the visibility, right? The mass is there. So we are just in the midst of running a program that we call a CEO Club. And set of people basis certain criterias and CXO nominations, you whittle down to 400-500, which will come down to about 100 by various mechanisms, with partner organizations, video, aptitude test and various tests and statements and whatever they have to provide. So, and these people will work with the managing director of the organization and all the CXOs on things which are future impacting for the organization. So that is the third level of people, which are a set of people whom we believe that out of this lot we can pick the future leaders of the organization. And obviously, the rest is through your making sure that you have a tight control on your performance systems, and you run your talent management processes in terms of talent review councils and so on and so forth. Because being a bank, there's a lot of focus on your succession planning at various levels in the organization, and so on and so forth. So having a rigor around those processes. Thank you. I'll stop there.
Sure. Thank you, Vinay. That was very insightful. Thank you so much. Sudhir, I'm coming to you. What, according to you, would be like the top 2 things in this one?
So I think great said, Vinay. I think if I had to further add, if you kind of look next 5 years, I think there are about 3 tenets we would say, I think everybody will start looking at. One is what we call autonomy and flexibility. How in a hybrid workplace do I get autonomy, but yet the flexibility, and I'm held accountable as an employee? I think that dimension has to be really carved out well. Second, everything we have done so far, even what we did in COVID collectively, is arm wrestle and find an alternate way to do it, right? But those things were still there. Where we will go now is redesigning the work itself, because the quantum of work that is getting reshaped, you almost have a job after around 60, 70 years now. You have to redefine what that really work is and how will it flow across the continuum. You'll have digital workers, you'll have humans, you'll have digital workers, humans. How does that work really flow? And how do you explain somebody what your really job is? The third one is around a few of the examples Vinay shared, and I think Colin alluded earlier, was around the positive leadership. How do you really define? Because as you see your workforce, right, your Gen X baby boomers are going towards the right, you have more millennials coming, we have 70% of them. It needs a very different mindset to come in, right? You go to any graduate hire class and say, inaugural class, and saying, how long you want to stay? And they'll say like 2 years, maybe. And I think if that's a mindset we're dealing with, so how do we attune a positive leadership in a millennial world, in a hybrid workspace? I think those 3 topics are going to be on top of, typically whenever we engage with clients, these are 3 topics coming up. Yeah. Where is the ball going to go now versus where it is right now? So that would be our take, Sonia.
That's absolutely great. Thank you. Thank you for Sudhir, for that, Sudhir. And Colin, I'm coming to you now. What will your top 2 things would be?
Yeah. So, Soumya, really, if you're from a manufacturing perspective, and since I represent a manufacturing organization and the industry, I think, and we're a fairly new company. We started and we're building up the new organization. So I think one of the most important things while we're acquiring talent has been really to focus on employee education, training, reskilling, skilling, upskilling, multi-skilling, and so on and so forth. And that's been, I think, a very important area. And if you ask me going forward, I think that's going to continue to be a very important area for us because, like every organization, the focus has really been, building a sustainable organization, a sustainable workforce that really contribute to the organization's success, over a period of time. And what we have done really, we've partnered with digital platforms as well as physical platforms where we have a calendarized program that enables this to happen on a month-on-month basis. So it's serious business. People know they got to come to this, they got to do this, and over a period of time, they get certified on what they have done. So I think, to my mind, in our business, skilling, upskilling, reskilling, and multi-skilling is going to be of topmost focus. The second one, and I think partially Vinay mentioned, and I think the important part of it is, diversity,
Yeah.
and today, given the fact that all of us have got more flexibility, or probably I think we've got more realization, a better realization
Yes.
that we have, a better workforce mix that we can experiment and work really around. And today, if you ask me, this has really given an opportunity to newer models of employment. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I see that as going to be a big change, which will come not only for the next year, but over a period of time. I think we will institutionalize new models of employment that will probably be cemented during the course of this year. Yeah. And I'm happy, since I know we spoke about diversity, I'm happy to say that, today we started off with a diversity of 18%, and today I'm happy to say that we have a diversity of 31%.
Oh,
So
wow.
so we've taken up, we focused on really improving the diversity quotient in our company.
Absolutely.
And of course, the last point that I wanted to mention is, and I think every organization today has realized that, and that's going to be an important focus going forward. It is on really employee health, well-being, and so on and so forth. And this is going to be a top priority for most organizations, where companies are really going to continue to focus on care. And we have done a lot of that I think all our organizations have done that, but I think that'll stay continuous. So the focus on more employee care, with the objective to improve wellness, productivity, and so on and so forth. I think broadly, these are three areas that I think we will continue to focus on, not only
Yeah.
next year, but I think in the years to come.
In the years to come.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Colin. Thank you. Thank you so much. And that's a commendable leap from 18 to 31%. So kudos to your team on achieving that. I'm coming to Pooja now, to you. A very interesting question. As everyone is sharing these views, I think the next important element that you cannot miss is an employer experience portfolio that leaders are looking at, they are curating. So I would love to know from you that how are you curating an EX portfolio that really stands out for your workforce? And maybe if you could just share like two examples of it, or maybe two insights around it, that would be great.
Sure. I think the first things first, when you talk about employee experience, what has really changed to solicit a change from what we were already doing? One of the big changes that I have seen, at least, has been the kind of recruitment funnel that we have has changed dramatically. So you were going to an X campus or an X college or an X location to be able to hire. But with all of this that has come about in the past 2 years, the funnel is broad and it's open for you to recruit or for you to get talent from wherever you want. And that's the kind of flexibility that organizations states are enjoying. With that in mind, what has happened, and to Colin's point, is that has resulted in a much more diverse workforce. And I'm not talking about gender only, you're talking about regional, community, religious, whatever. So there's been a huge influx of diversity when it comes to right from the time that they enter the organization. Now, with that in mind, it becomes very important to curate an employee experience that caters to all of that. So that is important. That is the first point. The second is, again, to quote, whether it's millennials or Generation Z or whatever the case may be, imagine the shift that has happened from, let's say, let's say 5-7 years ago, when you thought about the best employers and, things like Google and Facebook came to mind. And the reason you would ask, why are they the best employers? Well, they have a salon on campus and they have a dry cleaning service on campus and they have all those fancy things that don't really require you to step out of the campus at all. It's really jazzy. Today, fast forward 5-7 years, I can place a bet on it, and I'm sure there are enough and more research papers that we can refer to, that those are no longer the things that would attract and keep your employees engaged to the work environment that they're in. They're talking about far greater things, deeper things, things with more meaning, things with more purpose, things that really go with whatever it is that they want to do, not necessarily the perks of what you have to offer. So given all of these changes, employee experience, in my mind, has become extremely individualized. So we cannot have a huge sort of a thing in which you say that, for this group of people, this is what we are doing from an experience standpoint, those are considered hygienic things. So for example, to quote a few of those, digitalization has played a very important role in trying to make the processes faster. It's a WhatsApp generation. Today morning, somebody was telling me that if you're a founder and you aren't replying back to a WhatsApp to your investor within 2 minutes, you can forget about funding. So that's something I heard from someone, that 2 minutes is the time an investor would give you. So we are a now and here generation. So from that standpoint, the processes have to be simple enough to not test patience, to make sure that things like technology, things like speed, things like response rate, and all of those things go a long way in in making sure that people have a good experience. The second and the more individualized ones is almost giving people the option to pick what would make their experience better. So if you're giving a childcare facility to a millennial who has no plans of having children in the near future, well, that doesn't mean anything to them. If you give them a bucket list of things to pick from, that would you like to pick up, an additional leave here, or would you like to do this or that? That makes better sense, because then that is for me. And that is going to be very, very important for organizations to be able to retain the talent, because I think it's clear for all of us that it is a job finder's market today. The kind of the great resignation that's happening, that's not just in paper. We are seeing it every single day. We are losing talent. We are trying to attract talent, and next thing you know is everybody has 4 offers in their pockets. That's because the demand is there. And if you want to make that, I think one of you mentioned about the employee value proposition. In this day and age, employee value proposition is no longer restricted to a persona. It's restricted to an individual. It's literally individual. By who are you trying to attract? That's what's going to determine your employee experience. So I'll stop at that.
Absolutely, Pooja. Thank you so much. And I think the panel completely agreed with what you said. They were all, nodding their heads along. So thank you so much. Just in the interest of time, we have about just 20 minutes more to couple it up. So I would request all our speakers to share some solid anecdotes, and let's just get going on everything. Praveen, I'm coming to you now. What is your take? We've heard from Pooja, and that is such a solid thing that she said, that a one-size-fit approach will not work. And the examples are speaking for themselves. So I'm coming to you now.
Yeah, sure. So, see, employee experience is about the moment of truth in the employee's life cycle, isn't it? So, as Pooja mentioned, some point in time, people were talking about personalization. Now, that has gone out of the window, and now we are talking about hyper-personalization. Be it the offering to the customers, and now the expectation is that can we hyper-personalize the offering to our employees, right? And and when we talk about this so-called employee life cycle journey, although the journey is very, very similar, but the experience that you get out of that journey would be very different, for 2 individuals, right? And that's how I think the companies are thinking. A couple of things. What we have said is that we have defined what the end state for an employee should be. Now we are saying that end of the day, an employee has to be happy, passionate, and connected. These are the 3 terms that we typically use. And for employees to get to that emotional quotient, what do we do? Because as Pooja also mentioned, different employees' expectation would be very different. There will be millennial population, there will be age diversity, gender diversity, maybe sexual orientation diversity. There may be many, many of these diversities, and organizations have reached to a state where we need diversity, right? For organization to grow, we cannot just have one track sort, So we said that fine, we have to celebrate personalities in the organization. Okay. Again, motherhood statement, easier said than done. How do you celebrate personalities if there are more than 3,500 employees in our case? But end of the day, what is it there for me is something that each employee would ask, right? And through our so-called HR interventions, we've been able to kind of define that for an individual. For example, we have come out with something called Career Kundali, okay, which is a project which is very, very let's say innovative as far as I'm concerned. We do have transparent career progression philosophies and policies in place, but typically it talks about how you can grow your careers. But till now, we didn't have a framework where we could go and ask an employee that, what do you want to do from here on? If you are, let's assume, a finance professional, do you want to try your hands in IT or in HR? And today we've been able to define that, science behind the fact that what is your aspiration, and we are trying to link that aspiration to this science. So today, anybody in the organization can raise their hand and tell me that, although let's assume I am an HR professional, I want to, let's assume, become the coup of the company, which is chief operating officer, which is all about operations. So we have defined competencies that would be required, and we are not leaving an employee in lurch. What we are saying is that now we have understood that what is your aspiration. We will help you to get to that, that position. So be it functional competencies, be it behavioral competencies, be it the timelines, and be it the interventions for you to acquire those competencies, the organization has decided that we'll partner with you. And this, for me, has so-called created that unique hyper-personalization as far as the employee is concerned. And, so it's again a work in progress. We keep thinking on various things. But, this was something which I thought that, I would kind of mention it in this forum.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does stands out. So thank you. Thank you so much, Praveen. Sorry. Sorry, there's a phone ringing in my background. I'm so sorry for that. Yes, so now I move to the other side of it. It is an integrated approach to workforce management, which is going to be a big differentiator in the post-pandemic world of work. In today's time, inclusion and diversity are business critical. So how are we exactly planning to move the needle? And when I say about this, it should be the inclusivity needle in the organization. And one example, a Chris example will really help. Sudhir, I'm coming to you first.
Thanks, Soumya. I think it's an important topic, right? I mean, diversity has been a topic which I think all the firms here, I think, believe in it. We have been leading it. And there's metrics, right? I mean, you have different categories that you could measure upon, right? When it starts going into inclusion, it starts becoming a bit fluffy, right? And that's the hard part of saying, how do you really measure inclusivity, right? So we have typically seen two things that actually are quite concrete to kind of give it a shape, what inclusion really means. One is on the behavioral side, right? Who does my manager feel or include me, right? Those are things you could measure through surveys and behaviors, how people feel. And that could be part of your quarterly responses, ad hoc, yearly responses, but there's a way to get a pulse check on inclusion, because if you don't really get that pulse from your org, it's hard to really measure if you are really moving the needle. Second topic, which when we go and talk to the boards, I mean, a lot of debate right now in India is around pay equity. What does it really mean? First, the concept itself. And second, getting your arms around the topic of saying, where do I stand against the benchmark, against my own company? That seems like quite a shift. Somehow, middle of COVID, that has started emerging as a pay equity as a topic with the boards of saying, are we really inclusive? How do you really define it, right? I mean, can I see a compare? But you can't see that compare for HDFC versus ICICI. So I think that's where it gets interesting, and that's what we believe that there are multiple ways to define, but there is an emerging trend around pay equity taking one of the lead pieces of an anchor space in that mindshare of inclusivity as a firm topic that you can discuss and call out and be proud of. You have been able to achieve it, right? So that's what we are saying.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you for that, Sudhir. Rajiv, I'm coming to you now. Rajiv with an I. On one Chris example on how are you moving that needle of inclusivity at Infogain?
I think in the context of the time, and as we will be evolving ourselves to get into more of hybrid working environment, I think one of the new definition of inclusivity would be, how do you bring inclusivity with your hybrid working population? Some of them would be working from office and others would be spread over 300 cities across India or in a global locations perspective. And the second element of inclusivity beyond the traditional things which we have been doing, and which Sudhir was also indicating, from a gender to diversified aspects of individuality to the way you operate as in the business context. So beyond the hybrid, then the different cultures working together, and you ensure as an organization that there's a seamless communication which is happening. And the third most important thing in my view would be that providing a safe and psychological work environment so that feel people feel that they can speak up their mind, they can speak up whatever they think, and you provide inclusivity from a diversified thinking perspectives and thoughts point of view, respective of the levels in the organization. So these could be the additional perspectives which may evolve.
Pooja, thank you. Rajiv, thank you so much. Pooja, I'm coming to you now.
I think pretty much all's been said. I think a diversified workforce is something that we've been talking about for a very long time, and a lot of times, I've been part of boards, etc., and everything has been restricted to numbers of hiring and recruitment funnels and all of those things, which is great because that's where it begins. But I think where the real needle of inclusivity is going to move is if you're able to talk about that middle layer of management or leadership positions and see how diverse are you there. So that's where, things tend to, a lot of attrition happens at the lower levels or at the junior levels or at the, fresher levels. A lot of hiring happens there. But then the real story lies in how are you able to progress your diverse workforce through the ranks? Do they have a development thing? In the name of inclusivity, the one thing that most organizations do, and it's not entirely wrong, although I do believe it is not enough, is, we do all have a training on biases and all of those things, and we love all of those things. But I'm not too sure that without a practical side to it, can that even make a difference? So when I say a practical side, so for example, organizations like Citibank, Google, etc., they've gone to the extent of making affiliation groups, which means that, when you talk about diversity, there are affiliation groups in organizations that I know that have just women. That's not affiliation. You have men in that as well. Or when you talk about regional diversity, you're trying to get people from different regions and you're trying to make a diverse workforce. First, be very clear on why you're doing it. Just because it's the talk of the town, that's why, or you genuinely feel that your employee should be a microcosm of your customer. That's the logical reason for doing it. So if that is the case, then you shift your needle by, again, what gets measured gets managed. I firmly believe in that. And if inclusivity as a measure is only in the HR balance scorecard, chances are it may not really happen. It has to be in the balance scorecard of every division, every leader, every business, to see how that needle is moving and how are you growing folks that may be from an underrepresented fraction of the workforce. So I think that's about it.
Wow. Thank you for that, Pooja. I think this candor really helps. And Rajiv and Pooja, you did really share some interesting side of this, because there is a lot of noise around inclusivity, but very few organizations are really doing something which is commendable. So thank you for sharing that. And now, yes, I move to now coming back to Colin, actually. Colin, I would love to know this, that there has been a lot of conversations around technology, how it transformed the entire space, how it was the bedrock for this pandemic. And leaders are now owning the automation debate. So one thing that I would want to, hear from you is, how are you building the workforce of the future with the technology at the helm of it? And it can be like one prime thing that you're doing at Voltas Speco.
Sure. So let me start with Soumya. Technology for sure has really raised the bar of efficiency, productivity, safety, and I'm talking about more from a manufacturing standpoint. Today, of course, there has been a huge shift in the employment patterns also that has taken place on account of technology. And let me say that every industrial revolution has really created more jobs than it has really eliminated. So that's the most important thing. Coming specifically to looking at in terms of the workforce that we are building, not only for today, for a longer period of time, and the technology that we have inducted into it. I think if you ask me, it's built on three or four premises. Number one, I think we're focusing on building the workforce, which is on continuous learning and development, which with partners, with players that have helped us to build a workforce of the future and incorporate topics that are essential and incorporated. The second, of course, is to look at talent, and attract talent using, talking about what we are doing in automation at the shop floor level, and how we're trying to improve processes, keeping in mind the customer centricity. The third part of it is, really provide opportunity for young talent. And I think though we are a new company, I must say that we've given an opportunity for young talent to really move across. Yeah. So we've really given them the opportunity to take on new roles, larger roles, enhanced roles. And of course, we've given them an opportunity to build their talent through induction of technology that has enabled them to build skills while they're parallelly working. And I think a combination of all that has helped us, build a stronger workforce for the future. So I think all these have really worked so far so good. But I think there is a long way for us to go. We are still a new entity, but we are building it slowly and steadily.
Yes, absolutely. That's very correct. Anyway, thank you. Thank you so much for that, Colin. Rajiv, I'm coming to you now. Rajiv with a double E. One prime thing that you would want to highlight when technology plays the helm role of it.
I would say building the capability of the workforce. So digital skilling, through multi-channel learning paths and investing in and incentivizing learning, so that one can move talent internally. Pooja spoke about the challenges of each new recruit having 4 offers. I think if we are able to lose people within and yet get the quality we want, would be a huge win for the organization. And that's something which we are working on more as to contain the challenge than what would have been organically possible.
Absolutely. That's beautiful, Rajiv. Thank you.
Can I add here on a very
Yes,
light
Pooja.
note, since we talk about technology, and I can never resist myself. I know Sudhir will not really appreciate it, and so Rajiv. But the thing that we mustn't forget is that natural stupidity will always beat artificial intelligence. So it's going to happen that people are still at the back of running technology, and over dependence on technology sometimes does not really absolve us of our responsibility as people. So keeping it humane, that is going to be as important as using technology.
Absolutely,
Pooja, I
Pooja.
fully agree with you.
Yes. Sudhir, was anyway coming to you for this closing comment. But thank you. Thank you so much. We do agree with that. When I am coming to you now, very quickly, one thing.
With regard to technology and future workforce,
Absolutely, yes. How
well,
you going
I think the very common sense view is that it's the present day workforce which will take us into the future. So fortunately, we don't have to hire a new workforce completely for the future. I think what technology does is bring into play many sections of talent which were not in the consideration set earlier. Whether it was people who had to leave the workforce for a variety of reasons, and women are a big part of that. We know it's a social cultural issue of the country. People who are handicapped and otherwise abled, they are not able to participate in the workforce very actively. People who, for whatever variety of reasons, want to have flexible arrangements of work with their employers, even though they could be in the normal working age group. And not to mention, 60 is no age to retire today. People are mentally fit, they're physically fit, they want to continue working. So there's, the pools of talent which are available to you. And technology plays a very important role for that, for the simple reason that for an organization of our size, we are very much actively considering, and hopefully we shall move into hybrid working formally as the pandemic comes to a close in whatever form it does. So that enablement of the access to work doesn't mean necessarily being in a physical workplace.
Yes.
And that irreversible shift which has happened, and how can you, and technology plays a very crucial role there. Without that, we really can't have a spread out workforce working for you. So that to us is a very, very central theme going forward, which has a great upside of repeated lament of the people, that where's the quality of life and work-life balance and all those issues. I think it will hopefully correct significantly going into the future, and also help us tap multiple talent groups which are not today in the workforce.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very positive ray of hope, Vinay. Thank you so much. I know I've been quite pushy to my speakers today, really, really pushing on the timelines. But everyone, I'm coming to the next question. And this is very interesting, but would be even more fun if we could just tag it with one word each, and whichever way you want to explain it would be great. How are you all helping your organizations stay ahead of the curve and thrive in the face of radical challenge? So, can there be a one word that can define this phenomena for each one of you? And I can start with Colin first.
Entrepreneur.
Oh, that's nice. Entrepreneur. That's beautiful. I think
Yeah.
that's really nice. Thank you, Colin. Rajiv, with double EM coming to you.
I would say sustaining culture, would
Sustaining
be it.
culture. Yes. Yes, that's again a very, very great value add. Sudhir, I'm coming to you.
2 words: growth mindset.
Growth mindset. Oh my God, that's again an amazing insight here. Rajiv, I'm coming to you now.
It's going to be radical flexibility, we're fit to when, where, and how people work.
Radical flexibility. That's great. Pooja,
Empowerment.
empowerment. Wow, that's very nice. Thank you, Pooja. Praveen,
Maybe being agile and staying relevant.
that's again very, very, very solid. Being agile and staying relevant. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. And yes, this is one of, like I had started in the introduction, it is a starlit panel. And how can I just let go of you before asking this very important question? And I know I have about 15 more minutes. So just taking 5 minutes from the audience Q&A and coming to each one of you for the closing question for the day. What are the top 3 burning items on the CHRO's agenda today? So please feel free to let me know what is that one statement that is kind of keeping you all awake at night. And maybe if it's like one, we can take one each. And anyone can go first. So please feel free to raise the hands and say that this is something that I want to highlight to the group.
So I'll go first. So I think, for me, culture is never off the agenda ever. So that's point number one. Second is, in a world where every second day there is a new unicorn, and what is backing that unicorn is that one idea which they are able to operationalize and execute and create value out of, and therefore it becomes a successful business. So therefore innovation, I think, is big because it can make or break a business, because no business model is shock proof or fail proof today. Anything can be eroded depending on whatever. Third, from the workforce and sustaining a large organization point of view, I think your ability to have flexibilities in your work and policies around that, and how you're able to ensure there's always ready set of talent available for the organization. And if you just allow me 1 more minute, Soumya, I would like to distinguish between what we were discussing earlier about employee experience and hyper experiences, all very relevant things and useful things. But there is a certain degree of opportunism also, which we need to draw out and call out, which is that market is overheated, supply demand is not matching up. And employees are, in many organizations, people are indulging in behaviors which are very, very mercenary-like and opportunistic. Most progressive organizations today want to have a good partnership where they want to do good for the people that they have in the organization. I think the opportunity here is for organizations to look at getting out of urban centers and exploring tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities where talent is available with bit of investment around capability development and training. You'll have far stable set of people who are willing to stay at least in the medium term with you and contribute. I mean, their value systems possibly will be much more robust. Some examples will always be off here and there, but I think that's worth thinking about.
Yeah, that's a positive trend to look at. Thank you, Vinay. Anyone who wants to
So,
go next?
Yeah, so Soumya, I can do a one-liner on this one in the interest of time. So I think really the most important thing is really building a future-ready workforce that will enable business sustainability, continuity. And why I'm saying a future-ready workforce, keeping in mind the new workforce mix that we will all have. So that I think is one of the most burning items that every one of us would probably look forward for.
Wow, that's so good. Thank you.
I'll add to that.
Yes,
I think my biggest thing would be taking away from what has happened in the past 2 years. There is no reason to believe that a black swan event is not going to happen again.
Yes.
So for me, at least even in our organization, what we're talking about a lot is the idea of a resilient organization. So not resilient people, a resilient organization. So whether it's your structure, whether it's your policies, whether it's succession planning, whether it's local level empowerment, it's to say that every unit or every location should actually function like an independent profit center, that tomorrow something happens, one side of the organization doesn't get impacted by the other. So what is it that we can do to even the structures, for example, even if it means that, you're hiring more than you need currently and the costs are not being justified, yet, that's the cost you're paying to make your structure and your organization resilient, we would probably go for that. So that's one thing.
Yeah,
I
that's
can,
very true, Pooja. Yes, sorry, Rajiv, you were
sorry.
saying something.
Yeah, I'm saying, for technology companies like us, the biggest challenge is that we are dealing with employee market. So to be able to deal with that, I think from a three burning items perspective, I'll talk about differentiated EVP, because we cannot, win this situation with what we were doing in the earlier context. Second is employer brand positioning. It's all about how do you position yourself. And then third is equity, both internal as well as external, because we are seeing, there's a big issue there. So these are the three
Absolutely.
topics.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. Praveen, would you like to share your top three burning agendas at the moment?
Yeah, maybe two. One
Yes,
is the fact
absolutely.
that how are you going to keep the HR function relevant as a function, because it cannot work independently, right? So I have to make sure that I partner with the business for the function to be relevant, which essentially means that the entire team as well will have to start thinking on those lines, that how do you create value for the business. So that's one thing which, and it's a journey, right? And it's a so dynamic journey that things changes at a very faster pace outside, right? So that's one thing which I keep thinking. The second thing would be saying after COVID, employee market or talent market has become to a larger extent industry agnostic.
Yeah.
Okay, we do hire from different industries and we do lose talent to different industries. So how do you create that environment where people find that their aspirations will be met in a service industry and a product industry like in an insurance, vis-a-vis when I compare it with a technology industry, etc. So that is something which I keep thinking about it, and that's something which as a team we are trying to kind of inculcate as a part of maybe our offering to our employees.
True. Thank you, Praveen. Thank you so much. Sudhir, I'm coming to you. I know Sudhir is taking all the time from the session to answer the questions. Thank you so much for that, Sudhir. But happy to hear from you on this.
Yeah, thanks, Soumya. I think one of the things that is hard, because we are a consulting firm, I think, is this concept of you got to treat a consultant like a doctor when you engage, right? Because you can't do half, you can't be a Google doctor, right? So I think that's the hardest part in these engagements when you engage, is to really think through and help through customers see through what that endpoint would look like, not now, because whatever you do today, you'll have a 2-3 year cycle before you actually start seeing in a backward view whether those decisions were right. I think that is the hardest part for us to do. The second part, which I think there's a bit more openness, is this art of possible. Right? And I think somebody had this question on which I answered the first one, which is around how do we explain AI versus software? And that's the hardest part, even in our HR community, wherein you want the AI to come in and plug it like a software install Windows, right? But the beauty is whatever AI models you build is your intellectual property and it's your strength in your competition, right? Unless you build your own AI models which work in your environment for your own cause and nobody else can copy it, that is a huge differentiator that each of the firms or my esteemed panelists could think about. But if you have the same platform, you had the same thing what everybody else has in the town. So how would you be any different? You're just catching to the norm, which Pooja was trying to say, hey, this is that new thing, we should all do it.
Absolutely.
But really having your own fort of what your intellectual, that secret sauce is for your own firm to work, I think is quite important to consider as you kind of build through your journey for next 5 years. So that's what I would say.
Absolutely, Sudhir. Thank you so much. And yes, with this, I can see that all the audience questions are already answered, and Praveen is answering one of them too. So thank you so much for that, everyone. And yes, I have just 6 more minutes. So before I go for a formal closing, there is one question that has come through, though it is pretty industry specific, but I would love to open it to my panel. Uh, our audience wants to know that, in our views, how the role of HR heads has changed significantly in the post-COVID world. So we can answer this maybe like with the one trend that you've seen in your own role, a shift that you have experienced from your industry standpoint. So I can start with Rajiv with the double E first. Rajiv, just one thing that you've seen is changed for you.
I would say that it would be taking business continuity and a longer term view of things, which earlier business continuity process was more a training you did. I think last 2 years we lived it and aced it.
We lived it and we aced it. I think, wow, that's a great sum up. Thank you for that, Rajiv. Pooja, I'm coming to you.
A much deeper and holistic partnership with finance and IT in the company. I don't remember having worked with these two sets of people as much as I worked in the past 2 years. IT for the digital and finance, because cost was always you really can't go anywhere with that. So those two, and coupled with HR, I think the three became almost as one unit to make sure that the organization stayed on track. So that was the big change.
That was the potent mix. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Pooja. When I'm coming to you, one shift that you've seen in your role in the last 2 years.
So not per se in the role, perhaps it helps in delivery of the functional objectives better. But I think that, a sensitivity towards employees, seeing them as people and human beings, and that sensitivity, which I think came across from the higher echelons of leaders all the way down to team managers level.
Yes.
That it's just not a factor of production, to use an economic term, but these are people, because you had the same fears that they had, and all those things. I think every organization today is far more sensitive on the care side than it was 2 years back, I think, and that makes the HR job relatively easier than when you want to pursue your people policies.
Sensitivity it is for Vinay. Thank you, Vinay. I'm coming to Colin.
I think it's been a journey of driving change, really, and at the forefront, and really an opportunity coupled with ensuring people take a lot of technology, incorporate a lot of technology in everything that they do. So I think HR has paid the maximum in the last 2 years, and I can personally say that last 2 years I've driven a lot of change, in mindsets of people, and made that shift that will probably go a long way.
Absolutely, Colin. Thank you so much. That is a beautiful synergy that we're all looking forward to. Praveen, I'm coming to you.
There's a push that HR understands business before business understands HR. So that's something which we've been trying to practice. If we understand business, we'll be able to drive people, policies, and practices in a much better way instead of it being standalone. And there's a need now for HR professionals to get into that mindset.
Yes, absolutely, Praveen. Thank you. Thank you for that. Sudhir, I'm coming to you.
I think one of the things, it's more on the care side. I think we all believed in consulting world, you got to show up face to face.
Yes.
We could not imagine how would you deliver a project remotely. And I think now it's come to a point where you start agreeing, okay, these are the milestones when the team should meet and the squad should come together. And these are the times you actually could do, because it's also a burden that if your consultants show up and the client team is in a hybrid environment, then it forces their teams to start showing up. It starts, it's a vicious cycle. So that has been an interesting journey to kind of unlearn and relearn. And then work with the pace of the customer, because banking, manufacturing, it's a very different chalk and cheese when you start working in those environments. But that has been quite an interesting, actually, to unwind first and then get to the part where I'm saying, okay, now we understand what it will take to deliver this project successfully with the client, right? So that has been our learning.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for that, Sudhir. And Rajiv, I'm coming to you as a closing comment.
Two elements. On one side, it's the human-centered and empathy. Anything which we have been doing, these are the elements of drivers for us. And on the other side, a lot of analytics and simulations, right? So a lot of energy and time has gone into running multiple scenarios, simulations, and building analysis or analytics on top of it. So these things have evolved for me.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Shaji. And yes, with that, everyone, we've come to the end of this session. It was such a delight to moderate this powerful group of leaders. Thank you so much for your honesty, your candor, and your vivaciousness. The insights that you shared were truly helpful. And, together we've definitely catalyzed the conversation, rooting for change and innovation. So thank you so much once again for being a part of this tribe. And with this, we come to the end of today's session. And as Mahatma Gandhi says, the future depends on what you do today. And our illuminated panel definitely showed us the way for a brighter and a shinier future and a more realistic one. So now I'm going to take a moment to thank the diligent and ever smiling teams of the ETHR World and IBM who've put in their relentless efforts to carve this discussion, our wonderful set of speakers who took out their time to join us for this session and shared such amazing insights, and our audience for all your questions and reflections. You are the perspective window that helps us in staying true and relevant in all our endeavors. Big thank you, everyone, and have a fantastic evening ahead. Bye bye.